Okay, so in this video we're going to work on a couple of functions to give and take away materials, because we are going to be using them a fair bit. So if we come over to our search plugin, where we're actually giving materials to the player, although it's a fairly simple query, it could get, it can get sort of bulky and repetitive to do. So what we're going to do is we're just going to start a new file, caps lock, there we go, and we're going to start a function. We're going to call this function give materials, and we'll leave the parameters empty for a moment. And we want to first connect to our database, then close the connection. So if we come over to our search plugin and we just copy this query, we can paste it in here, and we can actually use this as a base. So now we're going to work on the parameters. Our first parameter is going to be our character ID that we're giving materials to. Our next one is going to be the material ID. We've also got our material type, and I think that's all we need. So we're going to replace the session CID with the character ID, the row ID with material ID. Where we've got compound, we're going to replace this with material type. And that's sorted. Rid of the empty spaces. And we're going to save this inside of our scripts. We're just going to call this function. So now we've done the give materials, we need to create a new function called take materials. Again, we're going to do the whole connect to our database and close the connection. And it's here where we're going to write a new query. The first query, we're going to select we want the material quantity from user materials, where material ID equals something, and the character ID also equals something, and we're just going to limit that to 1. So we're going to again put parameters in. We're going to have character ID and material ID. We also want material type, so we want to add that on the end here. So the material ID, we're just going to fill these up with the parameters that we're setting in our function. We're executing this query and storing it in into the SQL variable. And we're going to fetch the results, or fetch the object, and store it in row. Now the reason we're doing this is so that we can check to see what a quantity is. So we're going to say is if row material quantity is equal to 1, then we're going to have to delete the item or the entry of the database, else we're just going to amend the quantity. So we're going to do another query. We're going to say delete from user materials where these parameters match. And we're going to execute the query. Else the query is going to be update user materials, set material quantity to equal material quantity minus 1. Connect and execute the query. So now we've got this query up and right, these functions. We can go back to the search plugin. We can test this. So where we've got give materials, we're going to, obviously the first parameter is our session ID, or our character's ID. I think the material then is, the parameter next is the material ID. So in this case it's going to be row ID, followed by the material type, which is compound. Obviously, in order to use these, we need to include or require the function page. So if we just comment this out, we can go in and test the functions. Go back to our thing here and we go search area. What am I looking for? Use materials. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. We could have looked at that first. Okay. So we'll do this again. Right, search again. It's a stabilizer. Another stabilizer. So adium, which is a compound. which we've just found. If we can find adium in here, I don't even know what the ID that is. Let's have a look. Compound adium ID 12. So if we can find the ID 12 in here, there it is. We've got 5 of them currently. So if we go back to, if we refresh use materials, that should change to 6. 12, 6. So we know that function's working fine. Press that one for. And if we look, the parameters of the take materials function is the same. So in order to test this, we're just going to change give to take and save that. And we go search area. Which object? Oh, 21. What's gone wrong here then? SQL fetch object. Okay, right. I'm going to have a look to see what's going on here. Okay, so the problem was is an unknown column compound in the where clause. So if we go along here, what you can see is we've left out the quote marks around where it says this. And another thing I've just noticed is we haven't actually added the where clause on the end of updating material quantities. So if we search the area, there we go, trinium. Right, so whatever that one is, if we come over here, we'll try and find that. Can anyone see it? Quite right. Oh, because it's a stabilizer. Okay, so Celestogen, which is ID 20. So we can see that on here. It's a stabilizer. So the compound 20. There's 5 of them. So when we refresh this, there should only be 4. There we go. So both the functions work perfectly fine. Come back to the search. We can now happily get rid of that. Change that back to that. And then replace all that. Stabilizer. So we've updated our search plugin to use these functions, or the give materials function anyway. So now we need to do the same thing within our refined function PHP page. And the reason we're going to be doing this is because we're now going to be actually creating a raw material. So we'll come back on the next video and actually produce this raw material and run all the checks that need to be checked, remove all the items that need to be removed, and we'll be sorted.